All right. Thank you for coming. Yeah, hello everyone. Chắc là cho em xin phép một chút xíu em nói một cái chút dẫn nhỏ nhỏ bằng tiếng Việt trước để cho mọi người hiểu được là hôm nay mình sẽ nói cái topic về tokenize tài sản thật như thế nào ha. Thì em xin phép giới thiệu em là Mary, em từ Orochi Network, thì nó cũng hơi mọi người cũng nghe nó về nó nhiều ngày trong sự kiện này hôm nay rồi. Thì em xin phép là nhường sân khấu nhiều hơn cho các anh chị diễn giả tại đây. Đầu tiên thì chắc là em xin phép em switch qua tiếng Anh một chút thì mọi người thông cảm. Mình có thể nhìn cái bản AI đang dịch ở trên màn hình ha. Hi everyone, this is Mary from Orochi Network, and of course I'm very pleased today that I'm having all of you coming to the event Super Vietnam and listening to this panel about a real-world asset, one of the hottest topics in the world right now. People keep talking about real-world asset. People keep talking about tokenizing, derivative, assets, anything, real estate, and I would say like everything on blockchain. So what is it? Why is this the must trend for the global institutions and financial transformation? And why we are need to a little bit like switching to talking about real asset more in the journeys of Vietnam to becoming next, and especially for Da Nang, to becoming the next hub for financial. All right, so introducing the first speaker, my honor to have you here. So then I think just having all of the people here, all of the speakers here, introduce about yourself and your company, and a little bit brief about what your company is doing right now with real asset.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Patrick Tran. I am the Chief Strategy Officer for HELIX. HELIX is a RWA tokenization platform. We're actually the Web3 arm of HELICAP. HELICAP is a Singapore-regulated private credit fund. It has a 7-year track record with 0 defaults and a 10% per annum historical rate of return. Basically, we were born from a demand by a lot of our customers to basically make some of these private credit assets and access to RWAs using our strong institutional background and making these things available to decentralized finance and basically combining sort of the best the features from DeFi with TradFi. It's a privilege and an honor to be here today. Thank you, Mary.
Over to you, Victor.
Hello, everyone. My name is Victor. My Vietnamese name is Vo. I'm the CEO of Kyber Network. I have been doing in blockchain space for 8 years already, and Kyber is the top 3 global-wise in terms of trading volumes. So at Kyber, we are providing the trading infrastructures for all of the assets, and that is actually the ways that we think we can contribute the best in order to facilitate the trading experience with real asset. Because I think one of the most important when real assets to be tokenized and getting onto blockchain is that we can enable secondary market and a lot of derivatives in terms of the real asset, and that actually creates more values for real asset than before.
Great. Hi, everyone. I just want to say thank you first to Mary and the team for organizing such an amazing event. I've had a little bit of coffee. It's been very delicious. My name is Jeffrey Tchui. I wear 2 hats, and today I'm going to actually cover this topic in 2 different angles. One is I lead Asia-Pacific ecosystem development for HEDERA. HEDERA is a layer 1 protocol. It's been around for quite some time. And we have been heavily invested in making sure that RWA, STO, AI, DPIN, and then DeFi primitives are actually met in every local jurisdiction that we actually operate in. So I'll talk a little bit about that. The other hat that I wear, and it's unique because this is so important. One of the questions that we're going to talk about is regulation, and then how do you find readiness to actually launch in a market. with RWAs. So I started my journey building a asset tokenization platform back in 2019 with a law firm called DLA Piper. And we eventually got licensing in Dubai, VARA. And it was a great experience. It was also very difficult at the early stages. But the reason why I bring it up is because it's a similar journey that Vietnam has to undergo. Because of that, Hedera is also very active in making sure that we're part of industry associations locally in every jurisdiction we also operate in. And so in Hong Kong, I actually run the Web3 association called Web3 Harbor. We do a lot of public-private relationship management, discourse, and lobbying with the local government there on all sorts of different activities relating to stablecoins, VATP licensing, OTC custodial exchange activities. And yeah, we're happy to share exactly what our key findings and learnings are, and thank you so much for having me.
All right, so we have the founder here. We have the people who are master in terms of compliance and legal here. Also, we have the level 1 blockchain. In the two role, you also are one of the most compliant organization in Hong Kong that very experienced. So the topic today, we're going to talk about real asset and how do we actually bring in real asset to alignment to deploy for the financial economy in Vietnam. And I heard that there's a lot of movement recently from banks, from financial institutions, especially from our beloved government. We have a lot of movement right now. You might heard that Vietnam is very open up for blockchain, ready to apply blockchain for any activity of the daily life, also in AI and semiconductor and stuff. And yeah, from that point of view, I want to know more about your personal view on how are you looking at Vietnam right now in terms of real asset. And as you are a foreign company, you are a global institution, you come to Vietnam, and what you're looking for here in Vietnam? From Patrick first.
We currently have development teams in both Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh. Da Nang is beautiful. I'd find any excuse to keep coming back, of course. And I think, Vietnam really stands out in terms of its Web3 development talent and its, just the talent pool that you guys have. Young, hungry, extremely hardworking, most hardworking people I've ever dealt with globally. And I think there is a rare and unique opportunity for Vietnam in terms of RWAs. As a rapidly growing economy, manufacturing, of course, is growing tremendously. And one of the things that, as the economy develops, you're going to start to move into services. And just as like how in a lot of emerging markets where you've skipped that whole, copper landlines, we just skip that whole phase altogether. You have an opportunity, especially with RWAs, given that, and again, this is not a critique, this is just a reflection of truth. Vietnam's financial status as a financial center is not, it's still developing along. So with RWAs and tokenization, you do have a rare and unique opportunity to do this differently from everybody else. Because if you look at, say, Singapore, where I'm from, and you look at our development as a financial center, I think one of the things that we've actually struggled with is that we were doing it in the same mold as New York or London, and if you look at our capital markets, we're just, we're not even able to kind of keep up with Hong Kong, let alone New York and London. And I think what you have with Vietnam is a really unique opportunity here to just kind of bypass that kind of binary, very basic level of development and go straight to tokenization, facilitating access, and essentially lifting up an entire nation through these sort of instruments. So you can skip that whole phase of REITs and you skip that whole phase of ETFs and stuff like that and move straight to tokenization. And you don't have to do it and carry all of that baggage that you would have had in a typical, and that would really sort of juice the growth and development.
Right. So looking for more support from the government, because you already have some like really serious looking at Vietnam market, not only for the market in general, but also using the resource here and recognize that the talent in Vietnam is the best. So next to you for Victor. I mean, like Victor is actually one of the most known founders in blockchain space in Vietnam. He's the CEO of Kyber Network. Everyone here is, I would say, knowing Kyber Network here. But your point of view is from the builder, domestic builder. And how do you see all of the movement here, especially the thing with real asset? And if you can link something together with the previous panel about banks, and how do you like actually see the support from banks and the role of bank or any kind of like fintech company in this swift withdrawal asset?
Okay, for these questions, I would like to answer a little bit long because I think I have a lot of insight and also information in order to share. At first, like maybe one good news for Patrick is that I think Vietnam now is very welcoming the adoption of blockchains. We even have the executive orders, to build a national blockchain infrastructure. Not like using the other blockchains, but we have our own blockchains in order to facilitate something. We don't know what something is that, right? But I think there's a very high chance that something is actually real asset. It is about tradings and how we open the real asset to be tokenized and at the same time to be managed and regulated, to enable more values compared to the traditional finance. And also a few words to the banks, like in the last panel, everyone was focusing on how to improve what they are doing right now. But actually blockchain and also AI as well can enable what they cannot do in the past and they can do in the future. Which is, one thing is that when you can tokenize everything on chain, you have secondary market and you have derivatives for all of the assets. And at the same time, the bank can be the entities that help all the other users in order to utilize all of the values. Because now, like for example, if you have a house, the use case for the house is not just like to use as the collaterals, to borrow money from the bank, but at the same time you can have derivative of that house, to go to the secondary market, maybe have an option of the house, to see if okay, in a year I'm going to move, and then what is the price in a year? That should be a very good good opportunities for an option market there, right? And I think that is the vision from the Vietnamese government. And also at the same time, Vietnam is one of the most fast-growing country in the areas, and also at the same time in the global wise. And we also have a very young generation. And by nature, young generations at the same time are very good developers, right? But at the same time, they kind of like to move fast. They like to have a lot of operations. They like to control what they have, and they like to utilize what they have. They don't sit on like some fortune, right? But they have some small assets. They have some assets out there, and they want to utilize it and leverage it, and things like that. And that is the nature of a young country, and I think the government sees that, and that is the reason why blockchain is part of a very strategically orders of the new government of Vietnam. And at Kyber, we are not doing anything real with real asset right now, but what we are trying to do is that we know in the future for that blockchains, there will be a lot of protocols, there will be a lot of different companies that provide different ways for users to tap into different utilities and different use cases for real asset and derivatives of the real asset tokens. And we optimize for the infrastructures, for the algorithms, to aggregate all of that liquidities, all of that use case for the user. So whenever for the bank, if you want your users, not just to transfer money or to borrow or to do something like that, but you want your users, to tap into new value compared to the past, you can use Kyber API, for example. And by that API, the users, they can access into globally, all of the use cases out there like very confidently, and you don't have to waste a lot of time, to handle different edge cases, different errors and things like that. And that is what Kyber is trying to contribute into the national futures.
All right, you can see the very kind heart here that Victor and the Kyber network teams actually really want to bring on the best tech. It's not just the best tech, also the best people coming to Vietnam and really build and really contribute. We have talked a lot about like Vietnamese developer, very talent. We have very hardworking people here. But what people from outside keep misunderstanding that we also have the entire ecosystem that's ready to shine. And throwing what you say, of course, like the technology, the blockchain itself actually support a lot for the bank to develop, especially to the bank, all of the institutional or SME, if they want to tap into blockchain space, either applying blockchain in their business or applying blockchain in their innovations for their financial institutions. All right, perfect. And I think I would love to invite Jeff.
Okay.
For your point of view, like, I want you to talking about the point of view of Hedera first, because like
Sure.
For someone who doesn't know that about Hedera, they're starting from the concept of hard traps, very inspiring, and then the new technology. But then Hedera keep record their name into a lot of government treasury management firm in the US. And I would say this is a very important move, also very important experience for every one of us here. We want to move with the world like that because compliance and this experience very important for us. Also the other side for Web3 harbor in Hong Kong, and how do you like going through all of the journey, both the Hong Kong government and the US government?
Sure. Let me just say from the previous question, I also wanted to say a few things. I'm actually a little bit biased. I'm half Vietnamese, so as individually, I'm trying to find every single way to come back to Vietnam and then bring the teams and companies I work with here as well. With that said, Hedera, why Vietnam is interesting for Hedera? One thing is on a daily basis, Vietnam has somewhere in the realm of 4 times 10 billion of flows. It's not regulated in any VATP regime yet, but if you can imagine, that's only barely second to Korea, which is the largest liquidity market in Asia Pacific, or Asia. And so from a potential and scalability perspective, Vietnam is a massive area of growth for any Web3 company, enterprise, project. And so just to keep that in mind, it gives you perspective on the ability of Vietnam to really, really scale. Now to go back to the question that you had, which is about Hashgraph, projects, Vietnam, Hong Kong, US. I think there's specific pain points and use cases that both Victor and Patrick had identified. One of the issues that I've seen with asset tokenization, even from security tokens back in the day, we try to solve the easiest part, the furthest down the value chain. Asset issuers tokenizing a piece of real estate. But for many jurisdictions, that's one of the hardest things to do because there's so many other dependencies that are tied to, great, you can tokenize your apartment, but then how do you transfer the deed title? What do you do with the shares registry? And then how do you actually report this on taxes and income? It's very hard to do. And so I think Vietnam has a very unique opportunity because some of the technologies, some of the frameworks, some of the best practices did not exist in 2020, 2021, 2022, even 2023. And so having this position now and then having a great team of potential great teams, great founders, great talent, you can take these best practices and really do something very unique and special for the APAC region. And so that's basically why, from my perspective, Hedera and also Hong Kong actually look at Vietnam as a really interesting market. Now from the US, okay. I'm not going to speak on behalf of the United States. I'm actually American as well, so half American, Vietnamese, Chinese. And I would have to say that the opportunity in front of us is really short-term. The short-term opportunity is really between current trade finance opportunities. And you've seen with the previous 4 or 8 years, different changes within supply chain, with semiconductor focus, to intellectual property and then trade between, China, Hong Kong, China, America, and then a few other partners in the region. Tokenization can solve a lot of these problems. Now, let's go back deeper. So tokenization from a stablecoin perspective for cross-border trade settlement between VND, US dollar, and RMB. That's a very interesting use case that RWA can really solve and really enables cross-border activities between Vietnamese banks, local and foreign entities, and then all of the different financial hubs as well. So Singapore, Hong Kong, tied back to the main US and China. And one thing I do want to cover why in the US is interesting because recently we've just announced the Genius Act. And then that opens up the floodgates for potential tokenization of deposits and other short-term cash equivalents. And then utilizing this to settle various different smart contracts when it comes to invoices for trade finance, even to intellectual property and other assets. It allows a lot of movement and liquidity in things that were not liquid before. And I'll stop with this last one. What's also very interesting about Vietnam is there's many rare earth metals in Vietnam. And geopolitically, tokenization of those commoditized assets can actually generate a lot of benefit for Vietnam. As we move into the next era of electrification and then a lot of artificial intelligence requirements, when energy is a big part of that. And so from end to end, I think Hedera is very adamant about figuring out how to be part of the story.
All right, so Hedera, seeing a lot of opportunity in Vietnam. You see that in addition to outside, they actually looking at Vietnam the next destinations. And what we need to do in here in Vietnam, creating a good environment and welcoming them. All right, I think for the next questions, the first question is about your personal point of view. For the second question, it's ready to share, right? Patrick, when I'm looking at your LinkedIn, and when I'm actually listening to your session in Bangkok about roll-ups at the on-chain conference, that I'm impressed by the way you really on building everything since the inception with the compliance strictly. That I really appreciate. And in Vietnam, either for personal or for businesses, the legal compliance still, there's a little bit immature compared to other tougher market, like the way you have to go through US, Singapore, Hong Kong, and more than that. So what's your company? What HELIX has that before? And also, how did you bring HELIX through all of the journey? And when you share more about your expertise with the compliance story.
Well, because Mary brought it up, just like Jeffrey, I wear a couple of hats. And one of those hats is also as the general counsel for Chain Argos. Chain Argos is a blockchain intelligence firm. We provide software and consulting services to a range of different governments, financial institutions, hedge funds, and the like. I just want to pick up on a little point that Jeffrey mentioned, and I absolutely agree with him. I was just in Doha in Qatar not too long ago, where we were talking about tokenization, just like in a forum just like this. And one of the things which was interesting for me is that in the Middle East, especially Dubai and a lesser extent Abu Dhabi, there is a keen interest to tokenize real estate. And I didn't fully understand because if you wanted to pick something to tokenize, I tell people this all the time, just because you can tokenize anything doesn't mean you should tokenize everything. There are a lot of things that you should probably leave alone. And real estate is such a politically charged, such an emotionally sensitive asset class that has so many implications. It's land, it's property, it's people's homes, it's where people go to shop, there's tax implications. This is something that's been around for thousands of years since the first title deed was hammered out in a piece of slate. So if you were going to tokenize something, why would you pick something that is of such a high degree of sensitivity, and instead, why not tokenize the things that provide immediate value right off the bat? So like some of the things that Jeffrey mentioned, like trade finance, with HELIX, we tokenize things like private credit funds, because a private credit fund typically has a lockup of between 2 years to 5 years, depending on the situation. And if you're an investor, and I can say, you've taken about a year's worth of yield, and you're willing to take a small haircut on that just to unlock the immediate liquidity, would you take that deal? If you need the liquidity, you take it. And that's important because it is, we think that, we don't think in terms of liquidity, but there is a price at which liquidity can be achieved. It's like, why do things go on sale? Because if you want to get that liquidity in, you have to just keep adjusting your price until somebody strikes it. And that's what we can achieve by doing things like, tokenizing private credit funds, trade finance, invoice financing. Things that perhaps make a little bit less sense would be things like, real estate, for instance. You have REITs, they exist. It's not like, it's fiction. So when it comes to compliance, the way HELIX has that advantage is that we've been operating in the regulated financial services sector for close to a decade at this stage. Everybody in the team has, in one way or another, been involved in extremely regulated activities for over 2 decades. And I've been a lawyer all my life, basically, so compliance and risk is always top of mind. So a lot of the insight that we had in order to build the things that we did was because of my work with Chain Argos in working very closely with the European Central Bank, with the US Securities Exchange Commission, working with the DOJ, Department of Justice, working with the Commodities and Futures Trading Commission. It's from that experience I understood what keeps regulators and policymakers up at night. And if you can prove, and if you can show, and if you can set up a framework where all of the bad and all of the ill that comes with this technology is kept aside, and you have a strategy to deal with that, then it's a matter of like structuring a compliant framework overall. And we have that, that sort of 30,000-foot view of knowing what we can do and what we can't do, and that has a lot of positive implications.
All right. So the point is like HELIX actually being an advisor also contribute a lot for all of your like government from Doha, Abu Dhabi, all of the country you have been through, and helping them building the legal framework to really manage the technology, also protect user at the same time, really not bias on the technology, and still protect the users at the end. All right, Victor. So I know that Kyber, knowing well with DeFi more than the rollout set, but how do you link Kyber with the rollout set? Because like it's something must happen in the near future. Like what you see from the compliance side, government side, from our developer side, how do you ready to adapt to rock and link between DeFi and the rollout set?
Okay, so one of the very interesting things about Kyber is that we are doing something that is so fundamental that even if it is real asset or any other trend, this is still, we are still relevant, because basically we are facilitates the way for people to exchange between one asset to another, either if it is a financial asset, or it is something about real asset, or even a house like real estate and things like that. So what we are trying to do is right now is we are trying to do the best there. And when we have, and also we prepare, to have isolated environments when we have the regulations comes in. We have a ways, to separate between like public liquidities from the regulated liquidity and things like that. So that is what we prepare. However, I think I want to comment a little bit about what Patrick just shared. I agree that we can tokenize everything, but we should not tokenize anything. However, I do have a different perspective in terms of real estate. I think one of the pain points for real estate, and actually Vietnamese government already set executive orders, to build a digital real estate exchange platform. Like so we don't kind of like go to different places, to kind of like exchange the house and stuff. So we actually do have that. I think one of the very high potential of the real estate value there is that you cannot leverage it very easily. Well, actually, when you have a real estate, you have a land or you have a house, that comes with a very high value of something, right? And you want to leverage it. The only way for you to leverage a house is that you have to like go to the bank, asking them, to evaluate the value of the house, and then waiting for a month, to get the money. And the opportunities maybe this is not there anymore, right? So in order to kind of like make the whole cycle of that leveraging operations much faster, can actually bring a lot more value to the whole ecosystem and the whole nations in general, not just for the citizens or something like that, or someone like that. So I think in order to tokenize something like that, having a ways, to make pricing or evaluating of a house or real estate very fast, maybe not in seconds, but maybe in a few minutes, that should enable a lot of other things. And it's set a precedence for all the other real assets out there. And so if this is possible that way, the only things left is the regulations. So how the regulations they could allow that kind of like use case, to happen, because like I agree with you, like real estate evolves with like some security for the users, like for the citizens and for family to live there, right? So, but there are still many ways, to like mitigate and control the risk there. But to have a secondary market is one requirement for us to like get into a very fast evaluation process for something, and that enables a lot of other things. That is the futures that Kyber is really believing in. And we are trying our best, to make liquidities to be the closest to the users as possible. And by closest, it means that it is much faster for the user to tap into that liquidity, it's much faster for the other entities like banks, to look into the liquidities data using whatever tools they have, like including AI, to kind of have a very good preference price that accelerates that process.
And that's why I'm so bullish on Vietnam. This is exactly the reason why I'm super bullish on Vietnam, because it's a holistic ecosystem. I have seen this exact same attempt being done to varying degrees of a lack of success in other jurisdictions, and this is exactly what it is. It's a holistic system which is self-perpetuating, and the liquidity comes from the people itself, which most markets don't have. It's like, why wouldn't I think this is a good idea in Dubai? Dubai is a tiny place. There's hardly any locals. But Vietnam is a great place to get this done, and this is exactly why I'm so super bullish on Vietnam, because you get to skip that whole stage altogether, and I'm really impressed by what you guys are doing.
Let me repeat the questions again for you.
I think I got it.
What HELIX doing?
Oh, you have another question for me? Okay, good.
No, the question is like, the initial question is about how HEDERA actually, I wanted you to share about your experience, the HEDERA experience with the wallet set, and come lie on the story on those things.
Okay. So one of my roles at HEDERA is to give grants as well as look at non-grant activities such as investments and potential partnerships. with individuals who are looking to bring activities on-chain finance, tokenization, RWA, etc. And so that experience has exposed me to a lot of different projects. And one of the frameworks I always look at when I talk to these projects, they want to tokenize something, they want to bring something on-chain. Not every single asset actually yields anything above its ceiling. What does that mean? So for example, in Hong Kong, Alibaba and Finance, and Financial, I should say, has a very interesting use case for real-world tokenization with a company called Evident. And what that is it has the electric vehicle charging stations, which is very popular in China and Hong Kong. And there's a cash flow component on that you can only maximize because there's only so many hours in a day, so many times you can park a car and charge from it. And so it comes a situation where when you're tokenizing something, you have to ask who is the end user, what will they benefit from it, how does it help them diversify their portfolio, and then you get into this whole thing of financial services and financial products. And I think that's really important, right? Because if you look at it from Vietnam perspective, even from Hedera, we're always looking at ways we can engage people to do more behaviors that are beneficial for themselves and for the ecosystem. And so I think I challenge everybody here, when you're thinking about something to tokenize, have that framework in mind. Can you actually trade it? Is it only specifically for improvement of recordation, and reporting, right? Or is it something that is novel, where you're tokenizing something like that has intangible value but has value, such as like student loans tied to their diplomas, right? Because there's no collateralization behind that. You're investing in the future. So things like that, the government has to really look at. Because then they say like, if you truly believe in investing in the future of engineering, AI, et cetera, and what does that mean for scholarships and different schemes, when you tokenize someone's diploma, that should have that mechanism built in place. And technology is second. So I'll talk technology now. What's so special about Hedera? I would say our unique value proposition is the fact that we have up to 39 corporate companies that will run our validator nodes. Our validator participants, which are made up with Fortune 500 companies, they have three main tasks. They have to run the network, which means secure the trust anchors of the nodes. They also have to sign transactions because it's a little bit semi-technical because we are public permissioned, which means that there's a specific number of nodes that we let in, and then the people who are in there, we know who they are. They have to actually sign the transactions on a regular basis. The last thing is they have to participate in governance. So you can imagine having multiple different companies sitting there and making sure that the best interest of the community, the protocol, for different areas of how you run a project, like foundation, treasury management, policy, priorities, et cetera. All those are done within all of the people who actually operate the nodes. And then we also offer delegated proof of stake. So because it's only up to 39 nodes, only those nodes can actually produce staking rewards, and then the people in the community who hold HBAR can actually commit their funds to one of these nodes based on the company they trust. And because you know who they are. So I'd say, oh, I like Boeing, so let me put my money in Boeing. I like IBM, I'll put my money in IBM. These are two of our node operators, by the way. So that's basically the unique value proposition of Hedera. Everything else is what you expect from a layer one. You know, speed, finality, security, scalability, et cetera. Again, I think Mary talked about Hashgraph. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions of blockchain is the only blockchain, right? No, that's DLT, distributed ledger technology, and there's many types of DLT. One of the types of DLT is blockchain. One of the other types of DLT is Hashgraph consensus algorithm. And then we use Hashgraph consensus algorithm, which is also called a DAG. So that's a little bit about technology, the differentiation, and then what we do.
Got it. I actually really want to ask more. I have a lot of questions for you guys, to be honest. But I think I would spend some time and asking you more, also inviting you guys to some private meetup that I think I can ask you more. I'm really curious about all those journeys and everything that how do we actually employment and getting the experience from you to helping Vietnam doing really adapt with the world upset and know how and know why. All right, you have just 30 seconds left, and then just say thank you everyone for listening. Thank you everyone for coming again. Thank Patrick, thank Victor, and thank Chef. And yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.